First on BBC One for the hearing impaired, news, views and issues in See Here.
Hello and welcome to See Here. We have a number of important announcements to make today, and some of them are the result of what you, See Here viewers, have been telling us. Much as we've enjoyed working here in the studio, it's about to come to an end. We are no longer going to be studio-based. One of the many suggestions put to us by you at the 1880 meetings we organised last year and the year before was that you wanted us to get out into the community more. You wanted to see more films. Well, we are taking your comments and acting on them, because that's what we're going to do. And we'll be starting from this October. That's the first announcement. Here's the second, as it appeared on Read Here. There it is in black and white. And full colour. Confirmation of what some of you heard months ago. And have been gossiping about ever since. After 13 years of producing our programmes in London, we're moving. Away from the big city to the West Country. To Bristol, in fact. There'll be a number of new and exciting challenges for us to grasp, and we're looking forward to them all. Obviously, there will be some changes, and here comes the third announcement. Again, you told us a few things about our presentation at the 1880 meetings. You said you wanted more and different presenters. With our new format, we'll need such people. So, all you budding reporters, get your act together. See Here is on the audition trail. What are we looking for? Well, we need people with the burning desire to be reporters, who will find the stories and research them and present them on a regular basis for See Here. It probably won't be a full-time job, but it may take up 2 or 3 days a week. It depends on how much you bring to the job. More details of how to apply at the end of the programme. What kind of a job is it? We on See Here have recently realised that few deaf people fully understand how television programmes are made, and more importantly, what the difference is between reporters, presenters, interpreters and translators. This was made very clear to us recently when we were invited to the Durham Conference on issues in interpreting. This seems a good point to try to explain some of the differences. If we are looking for deaf staff, we need to explain to them what their jobs are. So let's start with the presenter. That's usually what I do. It's what I'm doing now. Last week, one of the producers wrote a script. The ideas and the words which I've just been signing. They handed me the script on Thursday. I looked through it, made a few changes, had a few arguments, and turned the words into my own. In the studio, those words usually appear on autocue, and I read them. and then translate them into BSL. But I've added something to the written words, a little of me, which really means that no two presenters would deliver the same script in the same way. So that's a presenter. But what's a reporter? Well, a reporter plays a bigger part than a presenter, is much more involved. When I made the one-hour documentary in America and Mexico, and when Peter McDonough went to Jerusalem, we were being reporters, because we had to react to what we saw and felt, to report back to you on what was going on. Here's another example of a reporter. This time it's Raman Wolf, with his report on the new rules and regulations on the Underground in London.
I'm late. I can't be bothered with this queue. I'll buy a ticket at the other end.
Morning, tickets please.
If you travel regularly by train or tube, you will more than likely have seen posters like this. Penalty fares were implemented by British Rail last year, and London Underground adopted the policy only last month, because a minority of passengers dodging fares cost London Underground £30 million a year. The decision means that if passengers are caught without a valid ticket, they are liable to pay an on-the-spot £10 penalty fare. This will go towards improving the Underground service, so we thought we'd take a ride on the tube.
A penalty fare is an on-the-spot fare for someone who's in a compulsory ticket area without a valid ticket and can be charged by our revenue control inspectors and our ticket office staff.
Suppose it's late, there's nobody about at the station, you want to buy a ticket, you can't use this machine because it's an exact money and you only have a £10 note. The machine next to it doesn't take notes. One of the things they recommend is that you meet a member of staff, but if there are none available, you can board the train and at the other end you can ask an inspector or member of staff to check your story. If they can't do that, you'll still pay the £10 fare. If they do check and find that the machines were closed, you pay your actual fare. Otherwise, you'll still pay the penalty fare. If you're not happy with the procedure, you have a right to appeal. What happens if you lose your ticket?
Well, our staff are trained in dealing with people and are not trying to be unfair or penalise the innocent, and they'll make every effort to ensure they're not penalising people. We put a lot of time and effort into making sure the scheme is fair, and so it's unlikely that that will be the occurrence. If it is, of course, then you can appeal to our customer service centre within 21 days and have your case independently reviewed.
Great, I can buy a ticket.
Hello, where you come from? Yep. You come from Hammersmith, you have to pay £10 penalty fare. It's £10 penalty fare. You have to pay.
£10.
Okay.
Next time I must buy a ticket before I get on the tube.
Well, that was our fearless reporter, £10 poorer. So next time you come to our chat show, make sure you have your underground ticket. Otherwise, you'll find yourself paying an extra tenner. As I've already mentioned, it's part of any deaf person's job to translate. When the script is in English, it has to be delivered in BSL. Occasionally we have presenters in the studio who prefer to work entirely in BSL. What happens is that our interpreters help them to turn written English into written BSL. And this is how it looks. The deaf presenters then read that BSL and sign away. Like me, they will have prepared that original script so that there's something of them in the final signing. But it's not always like that. There are times when deaf people read from autocue when there's very little of them in their signing. Times like the Queen's speech, for instance. On occasions like this, it's very important that the words and ideas are not changed, but remain those of the Queen. This is what interpreters have to do all the time, relaying precisely what the person is saying. The big question is, can deaf people be interpreters? This was a source of argument and discussion at the recent Durham conference when various papers were presented. The question of access, interpretation, presentation is so important that we'll be looking into it in a future program, trying to find out how to provide deaf people with full and accurate access. But now we'll look at a different role for presenters, this time as interviewers. Agnes.
Our next item asks an intriguing question. Who should be responsible for teaching the young about the facts of life? Schools or parents? Last month, John Patten, the Education Minister, was outraged that inappropriate sex education was being taught to 10 and 11-year-olds in a Leeds primary school. Why? Because he thinks that there are certain aspects of sex education which should not be taught to young children. This video, produced by the theatre company Netty Netty, is aimed at deaf and hard of hearing children as young as 8. It covers personal relationships, sex, sexuality, pregnancy and AIDS. We invited 2 families into the studio to review the video, but let's take a look at a clip.
We all have relationships. All of us have different relationships. Others can have a different relationship,
but no one under the age of 16 should have a sexual relationship. This is against the law. This is because children, young people, need time to understand the changes in their bodies and their feelings before they start having sex. All the changes that we've talked about in young people's bodies means that a man and a woman can make babies if they have a sexual relationship. But just because you're 16, it doesn't mean that you have to have sex.
making baby is very important choice. People need a lot of time before if they want making babies or not. Not all women want to be mother. Some people never want to make a baby.
Okay, now you've seen the video. What do you think? Well, I thought it was pretty good, but I think it went on a bit too long. It was quite easy to get bored with it and leave without watching the whole film. Now, the end part I thought was really good. It was a good way of explaining to children about not being secretive, about if adults happen to touch you, and if you feel that it's not right, then you should be able to tell someone about it. So I was pleased about that. Now, Bruno, would you be happy about this video being shown in schools without your consent?
No, not as it stands. It's disjointed, and because of that it doesn't really get its messages across as clearly as it could. And I think there's another problem, which is that it tries to pack too much into one videotape, and so it's not all going to be taken in. Some of it's just going to get missed by children.
Valerie, no, I wouldn't. I think parents ought to have more say so that they're aware and they know what's best for their children. And I think you know if your children are ready to accept the facts of life or not. Mark, do you think that the video is a good visual aid for teaching sexual education? Oh yes, I think it's a really good medium for education, but I think it ought to contain more pictures. When they were talking about eggs, I mean, what is it? We're not talking chicken eggs. We need to understand it better. Julian, do you feel the same?
I think that videos are a good visual aid for sex education, but this particular video, the soundtrack was very poor in many places, which were quite a distraction. I agree with Mark that more picture would have been brilliant. Though at the end, when they were talking about AIDS, they didn't mention that AIDS was invariably fatal, which I think is an important point. But yeah, videos are a good aid for sex education.
Well, I agree with what Julian's just said. I think with AIDS, you ought to be aware that it is fatal. And just by taking precautions doesn't necessarily mean that you are automatically safe. And pictures can make it a lot more interesting. And at the same time, for some of the younger children, I think it might be an easier way of showing them about sex and the implications without going too deeply into it. Basically pictures that are suitable for the particular age groups. Now that was quite interesting, but unfortunately we have 2 boys here. Now I know, Bruno, that you have a daughter at home, so do you think the information is equally important for girls?
Yes, it is as important, and I believe that girls need the information younger because they go through the changes of puberty at an earlier age. The kind of information which they need is slightly different, but it's not that different. I mean, most of the things to do with sex, you learn one side of it, you learn the other side at the same time. There are some things particularly to do with, like, the development of breasts, menstruation and things which are specific to girls, but most of the information is as relevant to boys and girls. I just think that girls need it a bit earlier.
Now, Mark, did you find the contents of the video embarrassing? Well, I thought it was fine, actually. Had I been told all this by my parents, I might have been embarrassed. Julian, how do you feel?
I don't think I found any of it embarrassing because I've seen that, I've gone through that kind of stuff before, though I wouldn't be able to speak for younger people who might not have seen or heard about these things.
Now, do you feel because of the cultural element, because of the way sign language is used for penis and breasts and things like this, now this is different from hearing culture, how do you feel? Well, I think that younger hearing children tend to learn much more quickly because they overhear things, at least much more quickly than deaf children. And deaf children tend to learn through a visual means anyway. So I think we do need more sign language in education, but obviously without it being embarrassing. And I think deaf children should be given equal opportunities that hearing children have of learning things about this in their younger years, for example, through television and overhearing other discussions. Well, thank you all very much. If you'd like to see the whole of that video for yourselves, you can buy it. It's available from the Netty Netty Theatre Company, and here is their address.
From one video to another, and yet more roles for deaf people to play. This next item is about a deaf producer-director and a whole range of deaf actors.
Do you remember the old horror films from days gone by, like Frankenstein or The Curse of the Mummy? They were really frightening and scary, not suitable for the faint-hearted. Well, here in London, there's a revival of interest in horror movies. And this is a deaf production of Werewolf.
Well, when I read the book, I was very surprised because it was quite a simple story. And I thought, well, I could make a simple film out of this. And I could use deaf people using British Sign Language, because there are lots of hearing films in speech. Why not have a deaf film in sign language?
Where was London?
Hi. Now, you two boys are involved in the Werewolf production.
No, I'm a girl. She's a girl.
What? A girl? I'm really sorry. I thought you were a boy. Okay, so you're a girl and you're the boy.
That's right.
Now, you're both involved in making the film this afternoon. What exactly does that entail?
We have to talk and play.
So, what exactly do you play?
We play about and have to scream like the werewolf is coming. Yeah, the werewolf's terrifying.
Are you the werewolf?
No.
No. So, does the werewolf attack you both?
No, her.
Just her. Right. So is this your first time that you've been involved in a film?
For me, yeah, but it's terrifying here.
Now, have you been involved in filmmaking before?
Yeah. No.
No. So it's your first time?
No.
Right, your first
Yeah,
time.
first time.
Do you like being involved in making films?
Yeah.
Enjoying it? It's really cold
Yeah.
today, isn't it?
Yeah.
Would you like to be involved again?
Yeah.
So it's good fun, eh?
Great.
Well, I have experience making films and videos in New Zealand and in Australia. And then I moved to England last year. And I want to try and set up a business, a company making films here with deaf actors. Shape London is sponsoring this film, and they're covering the cost of hiring the equipment and lots of other things.
Well, it's getting really dark now. I'm sure that time will be running out soon. But interesting to see how Wayne can cope with this changing in light. Lots of deaf people who form the cast will be arriving here shortly. Interesting to see how they can cope with the lights and the cameras, and also the pressure from the director, who after all wants this scene right.
Werewolves of London. Werewolves of London. Werewolves of London.
Well, it's certainly dark now, and they've actually asked me to become their reporter. So it's off with one hat, on with another. Bye.
Wayne is still shooting and editing that film, and we'll let you know when it's ready for release. And now that information I promised you about the auditions for reporters. If you think you've got what it takes and would like to be considered, now's your chance. Start by thinking about a subject that you would like to present to a deaf audience. What are you interested in? Deaf history, health, money, benefits, work, and so on. Then think of the storyline. If it's money, for instance, it could be how notes are printed or coins minted. Or it could be about making money by saving it in banks or building societies, or even the stock exchange. How does the stock exchange work? There are many different interesting stories to be filmed, so think how you would do it. When you've done all that, either write it down or send it to us as a video. You don't need to go out and film it, just tell us about it and send the result to us here at the BBC. Well, good luck, and watch out for the address, which will be coming up shortly. That's all for this week. Please do join us next week when we'll be taking a look at democracy and how you can become more involved. Bye-bye for now.